line. Go, go, go.
Hello guys and welcome to Imola for what is going to be a fantastic evening of racing. Qualifying is getting underway now, and as you can see it's starting to get a little bit dark. The race will be completely dark, and today's race is Taco Tuesdays run by Formula Racing League, and tonight's race is a mixture of tier 1 and tier 2 drivers. So what we have is effectively a pro-am race, and we're splitting qualifying into two parts. So the first 10 minutes of qualifying will be for the pro drivers, and the second 10 minutes of qualifying will be for the amateur drivers. I'm actually a reserve in this league, so I'm ineligible to score points, but I'll be taking part with the pro drivers qualifying session as we see someone's already off in that Merc there on their outlap in qualifying. Coming across the line then as we set our first flying lap, and we've done a 1:41.8, so that puts us provisionally on pole, but I am one of the first drivers to cross the line. But it looks like I'm coming up to a bit of traffic now, and at Imola you always find your first flying lap is definitely not the quickest. As we go through the chicane then we can see we're already up on the delta by nearly a tenth now, and I'm starting to get very close to this Ferrari up ahead. Gonna give him a bit of a flash of the headlights, but it looks as if he's going to be on a flying lap, so I'm just going to pull out of this one and just create a bit of a gap so I can go again on the following lap. So the key to setting a good lap time at Imola is really being able to commit to the Variante Alta chicane that we're coming up to now. Charles Leclerc obviously spun here in the Formula 1 race at the start of the year, but we get through there okay, taking a lot of curb. I do run with the ride height a little bit higher at this track to enable us to take the curbs a bit, and across the line to do a 1:41.5, improve my time by a little bit. And then on the next lap, as we come into the Villeneuve chicane, I am 3/10 up on my previous best, but we just kind of have to avoid the Ferrari that was running a bit wide there, and as we come into tow, so it's just put me off a little bit there, and I do lose a bit of time as we get a poor exit coming up the hill, and we're only about a tenth up on the previous best, and we do cross the line to set a 1:41.4, which I believe is actually a Formula Racing League lap record. So P1 provisionally for now, and I'm just going to jump on board with Michael Races, who hasn't set a lap yet, but he does cross the line to move up into third place. So Michael Races is the championship leader for going into this round, and I believe all he has to do is finish the race to clinch the championship. So that concludes the pro qualifying session then, and by the end of the whole qualifying session I was still on pole position, with AMS jumping into second place just ahead of Dacuno and Michael Races. So you can see now it's getting much darker, and as we head onto the formation lap we're going to be starting the race in complete darkness. Heading up towards the start line then, making sure I don't end up speeding and picking up a penalty. I'm just waiting for those green lights. They come out. There we go. We're away, and it looks like as we look at the radar and in the rear view mirror, Michael Races has got an excellent start from fourth position on the grid then, and he's going to be on the outside, but I've got to take a very narrow line into turn one on the cold tyres, and Michael manages to send it round the outside. Absolutely unbelievable start from him in that McLaren, but that's going to give us a lot of work to do now for the rest of the race. Looking towards the inside for Villeneuve, but I'll just back off a little bit there. I know my tyres are going to be very cold, and it's very easy to pick up a bit of graining if you push too hard on the first couple of laps in a race. So I'm just going to try to settle down now a little bit. I know that Michael's a very quick driver, so I don't need to be too crazy on lap one. I do believe that we'll have the pace to potentially build a bit of a gap if we work together, and after all it's a very long race. Up to the chicane then on lap number one, and that McLaren doesn't particularly like curbs, and I could really tell as I come through there and close on to the back of him. But then coming out of the final corner, the McLaren gets such better drive and traction, and I really can't do anything to stick with him as we head onto the start finish straight. So I've actually been thinking of changing cars recently and maybe picking something with a bit more power, because the BMW is great in corners and handling, but it does suffer a bit on the straights. Lap 2 then, as we head up to the chicane, you can see the gap's about the same as it was at the end of the lap, but again I just close up very close through that chicane and on the exit. So this is kind of quite fortunate for me, because I know I can look after my tyres for most of the lap and then just close up to the back of Michael every time through the chicane, all the while building a gap to Ben Milden in third place. And then obviously the race is quite long, we've got an hour, and we'll have to see what unfolds and try to keep putting pressure on Michael and potentially forcing him into a mistake. So coming up to the chicane then on lap number 3, Michael takes a bit too much curb on the entry, gets that wide, has to avoid the sausages on the outside. It looks like we're side by side here, but I'm actually still just a little bit behind, moving over to the left hand side. But this is a very, very difficult place to overtake, so I just back out of it there. You know, there's still 53 minutes left in this race, and I don't want to end up causing a collision so early into the race. We have built up a nice lead over Ben Milden now, 3.2 seconds, and there's still a pit stop left to go in this race as well. So if the gap stays how it is at the moment, either one of us could end up coming out of the pits in first place. Coming up to the chicane then on lap number 6, and Michael gets a little bit sideways through there, and we get a good exit. We're not close enough to go for a move into Ravazza, but I'm going to try to get the best exit possible through the final corner and see how close we can stay on the straight. Coming into the first part of Ravazza then, and Michael runs a little bit wide, which allows us to close right up to the back of him. But then I get a bit of understeer through the final corner, and again you can see just how good that McLaren is off the final corner. But we are going to pick up a bit of a toe here, and can we start to close the gap up to the McLaren? You can see we're not really falling back anymore, but again we're not really closing that gap. Heading into turn 1 then, and just lifting coasting a little bit down into second gear, then early upshift to third so I can go flat on the throttle, and we do get a slightly better exit through there than the McLaren up in front. And heading into the Villeneuve chicane, just trying to keep him under as much pressure as possible, but he's quite a cool cucumber is Michael, he's not giving into the pressure just yet as we head through Tosa. And again you'll just see that McLaren pull away now up the hill, and the BMW obviously taking a bit more fuel at the start of the race than the McLaren. But on lap number 8 then, he gets very sideways once again through the chicane, all over the back of him now as we head down towards Ravazza once again. I'm not going to go for a move here, but I'm just going to stick my nose out just to try to distract him a little bit. He'll be able to see those headlights in his wing mirror, and then onto the back straight. But once again McLaren just pulling away. I am a little bit closer now though, and can I close up to the back of him and potentially go for a move into turn 1? You can see the gap is kind of starting to get a little bit closer now as we're just getting in towards the top end, but again I'm just not quite close enough as we go through. But Michael's gone wide there, and we're going to be round the outside, but I'm not quite sure how close he is to those curbs, and I didn't want him to end up hitting the curb and going into me, so I just had to back off the throttle a little bit there. But some excellent clean close racing so far, and Michael does well to avoid that curb on the inside. It's really easy to end up getting spat out by that. And then into Tosa once again, and Michael again just getting the better drive out of the corner, but it looks like he may be struggling on his tyres a little bit now, and I'm really starting to push that pressure on, and I just get the sense that it's not going to be too long before I can find my way past the McLaren. As the BMW starts to lose its fuel as well, the car's just starting to feel faster and faster. The tyres feel absolutely great, and I just really feel confident with the car. And I think Michael's kind of having the opposite. I think his car was feeling better at the start of the stint, and I think it's just starting now to suffer a bit. As you can see, we're just taking more speed through the chicanes now, and I was thinking about going for a move into Tosa, but it would have been a little bit of a dive bomb there, so decide to think a bit better of it. Heading down in towards Ravazza then, and we're gaining quite a lot on the entry there, and then as we round the final corner I get a reasonably good exit, and you can see the McLaren ahead is just not getting that same drive and traction off the final corner it was at the start of the race. So we're gaining right up to the back of him now, and the toe is really starting to show its effect. You can see that gap is closing in, it's closing in. Are we going to be close enough to go for a move into turn 1? I stick my nose out a little bit just to put him off, but I don't think I'm quite close enough. It's not the heaviest braking zone there, and it is very hard to get a move done unless you are pretty much side by side. And then heading towards the Villeneuve chicane once again, you can see we're all over the back of him, but just can't quite put the move together. The BMW just really does lack with that drive off the corners, and that top end speed to get the overtakes done. So I've just got to keep the pressure on him all the time, and heading through the final couple of corners then, right on the back of him as I have been for the last couple of laps. Michael just takes a bit too much curb on the entry to the final corner, runs wide onto the gravel, and we take the lead of the race. So it did seem it was just a matter of time before I'd finally get past, and I managed to do it just as we begin lap number 12. After a few consistent laps then, I did manage to get the gap up to 2.1 seconds, which is a nice bit of breathing room and just gives me a bit of a buffer if I was to make any mistakes. But Michael behind just set the fastest lap of the race on that lap, so it's definitely not going to be easy. Coming across the line then to begin lap number 17, and I can see that Michael has just entered the pit lane. So this is hammer time. We need to make sure we have a very, very good in lap, and there is a little bit of traffic up ahead. We can see we're closing in on the Ferrari, and as we get towards the Villeneuve chicane, we're very, very close, and he pulls over to the left hand side and lets us pass on the entry to Tosa. And then coming up to the pit lane, making sure I brake at just the right point to hit the pit limiter as we cross the line, and looking up ahead towards our pit box, and unfortunately there's a car right in front of where we need to stop, so we're going to have to go through him, and I slowed down a little bit too early and then stopped just short of where I needed to, and that's going to cost quite a bit of time. But I was on a fairly decent lap, and it definitely would have been quicker than what Michael would have done with the cold tyres and heavy fuel, so I might still come out just ahead of him. It's a pretty long pit exit here at Imola, and I was looking over towards the little track map to see if I could see Michael coming up, and he's just there crossing the start finish line now, so we have crucially managed to get out ahead. And this lap is going to be quite critical because I'm going to be on cold tyres. Michael's tyres will be nice and warm now, so I need to make sure that he doesn't gain too much time over this lap. The gap is showing at 2.7 seconds, but he'll definitely bring that down as the lap goes on. But as we come down the hill heading into Acqua Minerale, the gap's currently 2 seconds, but as we exit and head up the hill, Michael behind looks like he might have had a mistake. It looks like he goes wide on the track map, and the time suddenly starts growing out, 3.3, 3.4, so he's losing time all the way up the hill, and then we are of course going to be much quicker through the chicane than that McLaren, and by the end of the lap then we now have a 4-second gap, so that's going to be a very, very strong position going into the later stages of this race. But we are now going to be starting to come up to a lot of traffic up ahead, so it's going to be crucial to try and get past these cars without making any contact. We don't want to get involved in other people's races, so I certainly won't be taking any unnecessary risks. The first car then was this black Ferrari of Limaro, and then the Ferrari up ahead is actually GT Jamie, who's in second place in this race at the moment, so he's yet to pit. And as we come around the final corner, you can see he's run out wide there, getting a couple of wheels on the gravel, and this means we're just going to have a much faster closing speed on the straight. I'm not sure if he's actually potentially lifting off the throttle here, just to make things a little bit easier for me, but he leaves the door wide open here. He's clearly not defending, and he's on the brakes nice and early, so thank you Jamie for that. Being a very smart driver there, just knowing that this is not really his race. And the next car coming up to is Andy there in the Lexus up ahead, giving us a nice amount of room as we go through Tosa and head up the hill then. And then next up we have two Bentleys, so the first one we're going to pass is Iceman Sean, and then the next one we have is Ollie RSR, who I believe is involved with the Tier 2 Championship. Now, I was stuck a little bit longer behind Ollie. I'm not sure if he realised I was there, but I did get held up a little bit for around a lap, but eventually I did get past him as we head in towards Tosa, as he moves to the outside to let me go, and we head off up the hill. Jumping forwards ahead another couple of laps then, and we're approaching the back of the Lamborghini of Faco, I think it's pronounced, who goes a little bit deep there and runs wide on the exit of the chicane, so that gives us a nice clear pass. And then after a couple of clear laps, we managed to set another fastest lap of the race, and that moved the gap to Michael now to over 10 seconds. So last 10 minutes of this race then, just trying to keep it all together, avoid the chaos, as we can see GT Jamie and I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Kaga Tacos up ahead, having a close battle for 14th and 15th place then. and the black Ferrari gets out of our way going through the first part of Ravazza, and then GT Jamie, who lets us past on the start finish straight, and then the following lap I catch up to Kino. I give him a flash of the headlights, just say thank you for making my life nice and easy to get past him. And then finally we have Law in the Mercedes, who I almost run into the back of actually here, but thankfully no contact. And then finally we round the final corner then on the final lap of the race to take victory. Really pleased with how I drove in this one. I don't think I made any real mistakes, except maybe the pit box, as I tend to do quite frequently. But yeah, first place. Congratulations to Michael, who wins the championship, finishing in second place as well, and also Ams, who finished in third on the podium. Now, as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you on track again very soon.